In September 2008, the world watched a titan fall. Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old investment bank that had survived centuries of war, recession, and financial crises, collapsed. And in that moment, the financial system trembled. But the story didn't begin in 2008. It began decades earlier, in the birth of modern finance, in the creation of complex financial instruments, in a world that prioritized profit over prudence and innovation over caution. This is the story of Lehman Brothers, a bank that epitomized ambition, risk, and ultimately hubris. And it's the story of how the global financial system was shaken to its core by a single collapse. Lehman Brothers was no ordinary bank. Founded in 1850 in Montgomery, Alabama, it grew from a small dry goods store into a global financial powerhouse. It financed railroads, wars, industrial expansion, even emerging industries like oil and steel. The firm survived the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, and the dot-com bubble. By 2008, it was one of the most trusted names in global finance. And yet, the seeds of its destruction were already planted in mortgage-backed securities, in excessive leverage, and in unchecked ambition. The story of Lehman Brothers is a cautionary tale about risk and human behavior. In the early 2000s, housing prices in the United States were soaring. Mortgages were being handed out to almost anyone. Banks were packaging them into mortgage-backed securities, bundles of loans sold to investors worldwide. These bundles were labeled safe by rating agencies. AAA, top tier, trustworthy. The world bought it, literally. Pension funds, insurance companies, hedge funds, foreign governments, they all bought into the illusion. Lehman Brothers, hungry for profit, took these ideas further. They invested heavily, leveraged their balance sheet to astronomical levels, 30, 40, even 50 times their capital. They were gambling with the entire bank on the assumption that housing prices would never fall. But housing prices did fall. Defaults began to rise. Subprime mortgages, loans to borrowers with poor credit histories, started failing in massive numbers. The securities Lehman held, believed to be safe, were suddenly toxic. Lehman's exposure was staggering. Billions in risky assets sat on the balance sheet. And yet, executives continued to issue optimistic reports, confident that the government or central banks would intervene if things got out of hand. By mid-2008, the cracks were visible. Bear Stearns, a smaller but similarly exposed investment bank, collapsed in March. It was rescued by JP Chase with federal support, a quiet warning that the government would save some, but not all. Lehman believed it could weather the storm. It was too big, too historic, too respected to fail, and that belief would be catastrophic. In the summer of 2008, Lehman tried to sell itself. Bank after bank, global institutions, private investors, all were approached. But no one stepped forward. The risk was too high, the exposure was too massive, and no government guarantee existed. The stage was set for disaster. On September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy, the largest in US history. Assets, $639 billion. Liabilities, $619 billion. The market reacted immediately. Money markets froze. Stock exchanges tumbled. Banks refused to lend to one another. Global trade began to stall. Trust evaporated. And the financial panic was only beginning. The collapse of Lehman wasn't just a single bank failure. It exposed a systemic problem. The banking system had become too interconnected, too leveraged, and too reliant on confidence. When trust broke, everything else broke with it. Across the globe, institutions exposed to Lehman's obligations began to fail. Credit default swaps, essentially insurance contracts on Lehman debt, triggered cascading losses. Hedge funds collapsed. Pension funds faltered. Retail investors panicked. Even central banks had to act quickly to prevent a total systemic meltdown. Governments around the world scrambled. The Federal Reserve injected trillions of dollars into liquidity markets. The US Treasury bailed out insurance giant AIG. Europe and Asia coordinated emergency measures. But these efforts, while necessary, couldn't erase the human cost. Millions lost homes, jobs, and confidence. And it would take years for the world to rebuild. Lehman Brothers left behind countless lessons. Excessive leverage is dangerous. Complex financial products obscure risk. Trust is fragile and can vanish instantly. History favors the prepared, not the proud. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: financial disasters are rarely caused by a single person. They are caused by systems that reward short-term gain, ignore long-term risk, and assume stability will last forever. Even today, echoes of Lehman remain. Financial institutions are bigger. Derivatives are more complex. Leverage still exists. The question isn't whether another Lehman will happen. The question is when, and how much the world will be ready. Welcome to Cash and Chronicles.